Hi everyone, and you're all very welcome to this afternoon's second in the series of our Credit Union Survive and Thrive webinars. I hope this finds you really well in this disruptive time that we're all living through. My name is Siobhan Calpin. I'm the Group Marketing Manager here at Intuity Technologies. And I'm delighted to see so many of our clients online. And it's great also to see lots of new names on our attendee list, and delighted to have you all here. For those of you who may not know us very well, Intuity Technologies are a technology company. We deliver managed IT, managed print, and IT and data security solutions for SMEs all over Ireland and the UK. We have a particular history working with the credit union sector. In fact, we've 40 years experience working with the credit union sector. The relationship has obviously developed over that time. And believe it or not, some of our team have actually been with us since for all of those 40 years. So we know the sector very well. We can identify the needs within the sector, and we're really experienced in terms of the technology required, and we have a specific knowledge in terms of regulation, particularly in the financial services industry. So compliance is a big focus for us. As you can imagine, with the current climate, we've been very busy helping our clients to get set up remotely. And many of you may have joined us for previous webinars at the beginning of all of this, focusing on that very subject: remote working, secure setups, cloud solutions, and also we did a lot of training sessions for people who may have teams or who needed help with their security awareness training. So this credit union specific webinar series that we're at today came about because we were really looking to find some way of keeping contact with all of our clients. We really wanted, the credit union sector is obviously very important to us, and we wanted to do something that would add value. Our aim here is, at the end of this, you come out of this not just surviving what we're going through, but actually thriving at the end of it. There's a whole new world flying towards all of us, and we want to do our best so that we're all ready to jump in and really, go at it. Last week, our webinar focused on improved communications. We looked at focus on staff, on board and members. And any of you who didn't make that webinar, if you need a recording of it, just drop me an email and I'll get you a copy in the next 24 hours. So to move on from last week's event, today's focus is on the new normal. We're looking at digital transformation and online member engagement, specifically in relation to the credit union sector. So before I introduce you to our speakers, I might just do a little bit of housekeeping, just to let you know that this is a Microsoft Teams live event. So like last week, it will be recorded. So if any of you would like a copy of today's event, or as I said, last week's, you can email me at marketing@intuity.ie and I'll get you a copy as soon as I can. Also, to let you know, as Mike mentioned, there's a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So if you have any questions at all, there's a little button there on your top right hand side of your screen with a question mark on it. You can tap your question in there and I'll feed it through to the guys at the end of the session. So on to our speakers. We have a guest speaker today. We're very honoured to have him with us. Kevin Johnson, the CEO of the Credit Union Development Association, or CUDA, as most of you will be familiar with, has very graciously agreed to join us. Kevin has an impressive career steeped in the financial services sector, and he's been with CUDA for over 11 years. So, he's had experience of working in this sector through turbulent times, and he'll be sharing his experience and his learnings with us. His focus today will be specifically on the digital credit union. Michael Cox is our very own head of business solutions here at Intuity Technologies, and Mike will be hosting the event. He has over 25 years experience in technology. He has worked in multiple sectors, from manufacturing and production through to education and software solutions. Mike joined us here in Intuity in 2016, and he is really driving the digital transformation here at Intuity as part of his role in the senior leadership team. He works with our clients across all sectors, and he has specific expertise in the credit union sector in relation to CRM and online engagement and marketing applications, And as such, he'll be giving us a demo as part of this webinar, focusing on the Hive digital member engagement tool that he's developed. So I suppose without further ado, it's a pretty impressive combination we've got today. So it promises to be an interesting and a really informative 40 minutes. So strap up and I'll see you at the end.
So thanks, Siobhan. It's strange to hear an introduction like that. So thanks for that. Just to give you an idea of the structure for the hour, I'm going to talk to you initially about just digital member engagement, what we mean by it, and some observations I've taken from the work I've been doing with credit unions over the last number of years, I suppose. And then Kevin will come in and talk to us about the digital credit union, as Siobhan has said, and then hopefully that'll make sense and we'll kind of culminate in a that sounded wrong, Kevin, sorry. Hopefully the two of our talks together will make sense and it'll culminate then in a demo of what we've been working on with the Hive. So to try and demonstrate what this digital member engagement might look like. And then we'll hopefully have left some time for question and answers from the group that have joined us here today. So without any further ado, I'll kick off and kick into the content. When you start thinking about an inspirational quote to kind of go, you don't expect that it's going to be Vladimir Lenin that you're quoting, but that's just the nature of things. It does seem that over the last 6 or 7 weeks of lockdown, it feels like time is moving at a different pace. There's an awful lot of stuff that we once thought was impossible that has now become impossible. So it is a very strange time. As I was looking for a quote to start me, I was tempted to go with one. May you live in interesting times. But when I researched it, I found out that rather than a blessing, it's actually a Chinese curse. So you have to be careful about what you use when you're taking stuff from the internet. So I think I just went for the quote from the Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times and it was the worst of times, and I think that's it. Just the juxtaposition of the good things that are coming out of this lockdown with people at home baking bread, and the bad things of the panic buying of toilet roll that happened at the start. So it's just funny to kind of observe what's happening at the moment. And I suppose from Intuiti's focus, we're trying to, as Siobhan said, we're trying to focus on supporting our customers as much as we can, but we're also looking at what we can do to tidy up and standardize our processes and look for new efficiencies. And we're very busy, especially in the leadership and management team, planning for coming out of it. So what does no more than the government giving us the plan for coming out? We're looking at our plan for coming out, and we're trying to focus on rather than kind of getting back. We're trying to focus on new opportunities, but we're very conscious that we're not going to go back to the same place as we were before, and there's this new normal that we think is going to form, and I think just even that term new normal, they were asking me for the title of the presentation, and I kind of said, the new normal, this digital member engagement will be the new normal, and it struck me that sometimes the ideas or words or phrases spread just like the virus, so that new normal was a phrase that I hadn't heard in forever, but I began to hear it 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it becomes, now I'm hearing it said in lots of different places. So I suppose when we're in a crisis, it's important to know that be crystal clear of how things are, but you need to make sure that you maintain a vision of how things can be. So I'll move on. The new normal stuff. So in discussing this, rather than start with the definition of what digital member engagement is, or what I mean by digital member engagement, we're linked back to Simon Sinek, our old friend, who basically always encourages to begin with the why as opposed to the what. So I'm going to talk about digital member engagement, and then I've got a couple of other points I want to make just on the new normal, and finish off with some new opportunities that I see for us all. So hopefully that'll all make sense. So in terms of digital member engagement, you know, it's more than just engaging with your members online. It's more than online banking and mobile apps. It's about changing the way that you engage with your customers. And one of the reasons why we're doing this, or why this is happening, and that there's a drive to do this, is it's been member-led. The member expectations from their customer experiences in other organizations outside the credit union sector are bringing this on. They expect you to be online. They expect you to be engaging with them however they want to engage with you. So that's something that's probably changed. It's not just in branch anymore. It's going to be the digital, whether it's because of fears of infection and social distancing, or whether it's just the pace of life and the way things work. So other things or other reasons why credit unions need to be seriously considering digital member engagement is, you know, why would you make an investment in technology to help you do this stuff? You do it for two reasons: to either increase revenue or to reduce your administrative costs. So if you can automate repetitive tasks, you can get return on your investment. Let me see. So moving on from the why, hopefully that explains why you should be considering digital member engagement. Moving on from the why, you know, the next part is the how. So the way that you get digital member engagement is you gain insights from your data, and that insights then allow you they inform your decisions that you take, and it allows you to drive out actions. So it's about connecting systems. Digital member engagement is about connecting your systems, whether it's your website or your CRM or your banking systems or your credit rating systems or your digital marketing systems. You have to connect these systems to allow for real, true digital member engagement, because digital transformation or digital member engagement, it's a change to the way things are. It's not taking what you've been doing offline in the branch and bringing it online. There's more than that. It's actually changing the process and changing how you do things. So in terms of the what's, I'm gonna dig a little bit deeper into the what's on my next couple of slides. So I've kind of broken them down into three parts: the inbound engagement, so the engagement where it's initiated by your member; the outbound engagement, where it's initiated by yourself and the credit union; and then I just want to spend a bit of time talking about some of the coordination challenges that might present themselves. So in terms of inbound member engagement, the first thing to recognize is that it's omni-channel. So the member chooses which channel they're going to use and what time at a time that's going to suit them. They're not going to choose the one that you want, and sometimes they choose two or three at the same time, depending on how important or urgent it is for them. So the first part I want to talk about is kind of your website. So there's some obvious things you need to do on your website if you're going to improve the quality of your inbound member engagement. So there's some obvious things like web forms. So you can design web forms. You've all been on web forms that are well designed and web forms that are badly designed. So you just need to look at your web forms and try and remove some of the obstacles. And then you want to hope that a well-designed web form, when somebody presses that submit button, that something happens in the background, that it's automated. It doesn't just go into an inbox and sit and wait for somebody to do something the following day. So maybe it's a notification, or maybe it moves it into a process or a queue. So if you think about who visits your website, you can get site analytics, so you can understand where people are going on your website. Is it borrowers, or is it new members looking to join up? Who's on your website? So some of the things that I've seen happen is, the quick quotes that pretty much everybody's got a quick quote at this point, or an ability for somebody to stop asking the question of how much will it cost me to borrow 10 grand. They can get that answer for themselves. And then the logical progression is to allow them to make that inquiry. Right, okay, that's how much it'll cost me. I'm ready to make an inquiry. and then maybe even go further, and some members will be ready to share all of the information that they need to make a full-on loan application from your website. So it's important that you've got connected systems to allow them to do that. In terms of new members onboarding, again, a well-designed form for some members, they would be happy to submit that information online. We're working with the Solution Centre on some ID verification, which will allow this process to be digitized further, or automated further. But other simpler things like, so as a member comes to your credit union, can they check to see whether they're in your common bond? I mean, if they can check themselves, then it saves them making an application that you need to process and then find out that they're not eligible to join your credit union. So all of these things can be done on your website. Moving on to social media engagement, most credit unions have an active Facebook page. Some of them are active on Twitter and LinkedIn. But you wonder about the engagements when the member engages with you on those Facebook campaigns. How do those activities, the questions and the inquiries, how do they get translated back into the systems? Are they cut and paste? Are they sent as emails? Do they come back into which group do they come back into? So that whole social media, you need to think about how that engagement, how they feed back into your internal process. Some of you guys are probably working on digital marketing, and again, the marketing phrase of a call to action at the end of any digital ad that you're paying for, that's going to land in Facebook or Google. You want somebody to click on something, and that click needs to land someplace, and you want to make sure that that landing place is fed into your process, so that whatever your call to action is, does it come back and land on your own website, or does it land on a form that allows them to come straight into your queue, whether it's an email queue or whether it's a CRM queue. Moving on to like email, for inbound email, like everybody has a info@ email address, but I mean, are some of you have loans at or membership at, so you can have different email accounts. And then again, if email is the system that you're using, or where most of the engagement is coming in, it might be worth your while thinking about bringing some automation into that and moving away from being just a common garden email box that's shared across 4 or 5 staff where nobody's sure who's answered what, and bringing it into a queue that might be structured in a CRM that allow people to assign different members to deal with different inquiries. Again, you're trying to move people away from email and move them towards structured forms rather than email, which means it's a lot easier to direct that to the right person, and then thus increase the response time, or improve the response time. Similarly, while the phone isn't online, it is part of the process. Some people call them walk-ins or non-walk-ins. So whether somebody sends you an email or somebody makes a phone call, sometimes members will do both. They'll send the email at 11 o'clock and they'll pick up the phone the following morning. So it's important that whatever team is dealing with this non-in-branch activity and engagement has sight of all of the other stuff. So you need to think about how many phone calls are coming in. You need to think about whether the person who's answering the phone is the person who's going to solve the problem, take the loan application, or is it somebody who's just going to catch it and dispatch it to the right person. So these are all concerns and things that you need to consider when you're thinking about inbound member engagement. I'll keep moving on to the outbound stuff, and we all, we're aware of the social media as well. So like you can push out messages on social media. A lot of people using Facebook, not so much on LinkedIn and Twitter for advertising, but Facebook and Google AdWords are the two dominant platforms for digital advertising and digital marketing. So I suppose you just need to, that's all kind of broadcast advertising. You need to figure out whether you need to get that part right, But I'd suggest before you start spending money on advertising, you make sure that you've got a good way of developing content that's fit for purpose. Because if you don't have the content, then you could be spending money in the wrong place. So, and you've got to set up your process for how you're going to deal with what comes from any advertising that you spend. But I suppose that the part I'm most interested in and that I've been working closest with credit unions on has been this kind of idea of direct engagement, direct marketing activities. So whether it's emails or SMS or engagement calls, like that's the part that I'm most familiar with, I suppose. So I think one of the things, a couple of things to say just based on experiences over the last number of weeks. In terms of direct email, like we've a lot of credit unions have been using this as an opportunity to send emails to their customers, COVID status updates and changes that they've made to the opening hours and encouraging members to get on online banking. But like one of the first things that you find is that when a lot of the emails that you've been collecting over the last number of years, that they're not as current as you'd like to think. So your first large-scale email out will result in the validation or the identification of the invalid emails. So you just need to be prepared for that. Other things to keep in mind, you don't have to send the same email to everybody. You can break them down into small batches. You can do A/B testing, so you can kind of send one email to one group and another one to the second group, see which one has the best open rate or gets the best response. And then maybe go with that one, whichever one wins. There's lots of advice and tips that we picked up from the likes of Microsoft and other direct marketing people to, in terms of subject lines, 3-word subject lines for some reason seem to work better than, if the subject line is too long or if the subject line is a 1-word one. There's days that are better times to send emails. But I suppose even those times that would be best to send emails, they were based on normal 9 to 5, where it mightn't be as true anymore with the whole lockdown at the moment. So who knows when the best times are? But you need to think about when you're going to send your emails, because you got to think about what the response is. If you send an email to 12 or 13,000 members, you're going to get a response. There's going to be a big uptake the following day. So don't do it on the day, maybe don't do it going into the weekend, maybe do it so you're going to have the response when people come out and when you've got most of your team available to respond to those inquiries, those yeses, those whatever activity you're trying to get the member to do. You're also going to see unsubscribes. So even if they're members and even if it's not a consent scenario, you're still going to see people who just don't want you to send it to this email. They'll prefer to send to another email. So I don't think a credit union will get in trouble for sending a member an email, but I think they might get in trouble, or they'll bring trouble on themselves if they don't unsubscribe somebody who specifically tells you not to email them. So you need to make sure again that any of those bulk email campaigns and the unsubscribes are dealt with in an organized fashion, and you don't get into a situation where you're sending messages to somebody who doesn't want them. What else have I got here? SMS. So SMS, again, I've been getting SMSs myself from my own credit union. SMSs are really good. It's a shorter message, so you can't get across as much information, and there's a cost attached to it, but they have much higher open rates than emails, and they're a very effective way of communicating with your customers or your members. And I suppose one of the things to think about is, if you don't have an awful lot of emails, you could use SMS to try and increase the number of emails that you have for your members. One of the keys to a good SMS message is that you've got a landing page. You've got a link in the message that's landing people back to whatever the activity you're trying to do. A nice short link, because you're limited to characters. But and then you need to make sure that you can analyze the traffic, so you can see, if I spend 500 quid sending 20,000 text messages, how many people clicked the link and landed on my web page, and what did they do from there. So this is important, that you've got a link back on your SMS. One of the other things that people have been doing over the last number of months that I'm aware of is this idea of engagement calls, and this is stuff that happened before the COVID crisis. This idea of just checking in with members, this idea of, rather than it being a sales call, it's just a member engagement call. Are you aware of our online banking? Are you aware of our card draws? Are you aware of whatever else it is? And a nice, gentle engagement call has been found in credit unions to have a good impact. And I suppose one of the key things I'd say on engagement calls is you need to make sure that the script is right, and you need to make sure you have the right people making the right call to the right people at the right time. So you don't have, this isn't a call center thing that you outsource. This is experienced credit union staff calling members who probably are in the right place. So identify which members are more likely to be doing, if you were making these calls around the time of education loans, you make sure you call the type of people who take out education loans. And you can kind of structure your call list based on who you think will be a good person to activate or to have an engagement call with. One of the key things for most credit unions that are engaged in this is you need to be able to measure your activity, and you need to be able to measure the outcome of the activity to make sure that it's worthwhile spending the time. So if you're making these calls and they're not working, and you're not getting engagement and new member signups and not new member signups, but new online banking signups and new loan activity, then you got to wonder about whether it's necessary or whether it's adding value. And again, no more than the phone call isn't really digital. Letters aren't really digital either. But I mean, I had an example of my insurance coming up for renewal, and the guys in Chill Insurance. I mean, they used all the methods. They used text messages, they used emails, and they used letters, and they used it very effectively. And they started the process 2 or 3 weeks before my renewal period, and they made it very difficult for me not to renew with them. That's the type of example, if you can hold that in your mind, of coordinating the online and the offline activity, so that it's coherent and it makes sense to the member. So speaking of that kind of coordination, like that's part of the challenges of some of the stories that I see. So it's like questions about how to deploy staff, what type of teams have we got. So it depends on how you're structured, but it might need a bit of a restructuring of some of your teams. So business development, lending, if you have the same number of tellers on the front desk, it's always difficult to get somebody to answer the phone or answer the emails in an organized fashion. So you use the advice or the information, the insight that the leads give you to understand where best to deploy your staff. You match up the in-branch and the remote or the digital engagement, and you need to make sure it's there. I suppose the COVID stuff gives us more challenges with teams being split and branches being closed and changes to opening hours, but it could be seen as an opportunity rather than a challenge in terms of the out of hour stuff with people working from home. Maybe your hours could be extended outside of the normal branch hours. So there's lots of things to think about in terms of how best to integrate digital engagement into your normal engagement process, your in-branch activity. In terms of new members, so like, can they, like, are they in your common bond? Can they check themselves? Anything like that can save you having to process inquiries. If you can help them to help themselves, it's always going to be of benefit. And that idea of like the credit unions that are active in this digital engagement, one of the key challenges they have is this idea of what happens at the counter and what happens online or on the phone. And remember, you can't control what the general public will do. Sometimes they'll make the inquiry, they'll send an email, and then just they're walking past the branch on a Saturday and they decide to call in and do it. So you need to make sure that the person who's working the lead or the opportunity or helping with their loan in the offline team is aware of what's happened at the counter. So you need to make sure your systems are kind of coordinated. You need to make sure your GDPR compliance and your web privacy statement matches up to what your activities are doing. So I think a lot of this activity is covered under member services as opposed to consent and marketing, but you need to make sure that whatever way you're doing it, you've mapped that back to your privacy statement. And I suppose one of the key pieces of advice that we've always used in Intuit is this idea of what's the new things I need to do, the innovation, what are things I need to stop doing, what are things I need to start doing. So it's important with anything that you're doing, and as you're doing this change, that if something's not working, stop doing it and figure out the thing that will work. So and paying attention to the detail, the data that comes, measuring stuff, that's the one that allows you to kind of work on that coordination or work on what's working. How am I doing on time here now? I'm just checking my time here. I'm okay. Okay, so just a couple of points on the new normal. So things that occur to me just from keeping an eye on things like money has changed. Like this whole tap and go stuff. Like I have my wallet and it's left on my desk and I've got one card and I'm just tapping. So it's just it's cash has changed, and it will change dramatically. It was changing slowly. This whole COVID crisis is going to accelerate that change, and it'll have impacts on how things happen. So I think cash has changed. Money is going to be different. Like there's some other stuff that's happening, like this whole 350 COVID payment. Like that's a trial run for universal basic income. So there's a lot of things that are going to happen coming out of this COVID crisis. Other thing that has very clearly happened is this whole video calling. So like, we've had video calling for a long time, but it's jumped to mainstream. Like Microsoft have seen a 300% increase in their stuff. Zoom, humongous growth in Zoom, and WhatsApp, and all these platforms have quickly jumped to make themselves more apt and easier to use. So whether it's one-to-one or whether it's team meetings or company meetings, like there's been a huge acceleration in the video calling, and that's going to have it's like a crash course for everybody in the world and how to use videos. So all of a sudden you've got 97-year-old people who don't mind taking a WhatsApp call or a video call. They're happy and comfortable working on the technology. So that's going to have an impact in, it used to be that you had to go into the doctor for a meeting to get your script, your prescription refilled. I think a lot of that stuff won't go back off video calls, because people will have seen that the video call is as effective as the face-to-face once the relationship is established. So I think video calls is going to be, it's gone mainstream, and it's going to have an impact. Distributed organizations, again, credit unions very traditionally very physical, very come in branch, but there's a lot of people who've now been working at home for 6 or 7 weeks, and that will have an impact. And definitely from our business and for what I do, I think it'll have a big difference. So it's important, for coordination again. How are we going to coordinate people that are in branch that aren't all in the office? We've seen organizations flip their back office and their front office. So different branches changing business hours. There's been lots of changes, and when people have time to consider this over the next while, they won't be going back to the new normal in terms of on-premise or remote sites. I think distributed organizations will become more and more common, and this has impact for business continuity, has an impact for security, has an impact for staff intranets and where you share your information, your staff information. So yeah, I think we've been partnering with a company called LiveTiles. We're doing a webinar on Monday, so that might be worth looking at, anybody who's interested in staff intranets. I'm on to my last 2 slides, and I'm going to give it back to Kevin. I'm conscious I'm probably a little bit over time, but there's a term that's very common in my sphere, this idea of digital transformation. And for me, digital member engagement done right is the digital transformation for a credit union. So it is, a crisis. This isn't something that's led by technology or by senior management. Sometimes the crisis is what brings this whole move and change to the digital and the online stuff. So I suppose some of the things I'd say, it's people are beginning to collect the data for purpose, and it is, whether it's email addresses or consents or employers. It's not just, oh yeah, it's on the form, it's always been on the form. They're doing it for a purpose, and that's important. And it's important to connect, and it's important to automate. So there's so much data that if you're continuing to try and do the data that you're collecting now using the same manual kind of cranking paper moving process, it won't work. So it's about connecting it. It's about making sure the systems, you can automate the bits between the systems. And I suppose we talked about gain and insights. One of the key things to remember is this isn't just about bringing processes that are, normal processes, your current processes, and bringing them online. This is about looking at your new member processes and creating them as digital processes. So new member onboarding or current account signups, whatever your key challenge is, this process can be digitized as long as you're ready to change the process and allow the technology to help. So finally, just to kind of go back to, the reasons, like the credit unions have been in the top, winning the customer experience prizes for the last 5 years. It's really important that if we do this digital member engagement, if we bring our engagement with members online, that we have to bring the full experience, and we have to make sure that we don't lose what has been key in bringing us to where we are. So I'm over time, so I'm sorry for that. I'm gonna hand over to Kevin, who is going to talk a little bit about the digital credit union. So thanks for listening.
Okay, Mike. Thanks very much, Mike, and hello to everybody. And I suppose first and foremost, I hope you and your colleagues are all keeping well and adjusting to, I suppose, the changes and challenges being imposed on us all by this COVID-19 emergency. That said, many thanks to Mike and Siobhan for the kind invitation to share a few insights with people. It's probably a bit optimistic calling it the digital credit union. Excuse me. But what I'd like to do is just in a couple of slides and then over a couple of minutes, just give you a quick flavour for the journey we've been on and are on at the moment, and hopefully that'll share some useful insights. And again, if there's anything specific, we can pick it up in the Q&A, or indeed you can follow up with Mike or myself afterwards. So I suppose one of the things Mike mentioned, which I think we've all seen it now, is that we are experiencing a significant acceleration in the shift to digitalization of our business as a result of this emergency. But that being said, it probably gives a whole new meaning to BC. I think before COVID, we were already grappling with how to compete effectively in a prevailing and persisting low interest rate environment. So, that said, the good news is that means there's already been considerable good work done, and there's credit unions we're already experiencing some good results, and we need to sort of build on all of those to help us with these sort of accelerated and accentuated challenges that arise out of the current emergency. So what we're looking at and what I want to give you a flavour for is the type of effective solutions to engage with members. And while that means more and more contact and communication is essential, it's how do you do that in a manner that significantly improves the cost-to-income ratio. So with that in mind, our belief is there's the imperative for change has never been greater, and that indeed COVID-19, we should use it as a catalyst for true and lasting change. So moving on, the next slide shows that a little bit like Mike was saying, and the Simon Sinek approach of the why, the how, the what. One of the best things is always to go back to as Mike said, like the why are we doing this, and so why does a credit union exist? And in very simple terms, it's actually set out in the law, the legal reason why a credit union is set out there in section 6.2 of the Act. And I suppose really what we're trying to do is really focus in on that middle one there around the sources of credit. And I suppose with that sort of clarity that's there, I mean, we know that's why we exist, and we know we've been very successful at it. So as we move on, we have to look at, well, why are we successful? What has made us so successful? So you'll see on the screen now the simple steps in what we just refer to as the trust pyramid. And in that, you can actually see there are 6 building blocks, and some of you will have seen this before. It's still very valid. And it's very, very important that we don't lose sight of this as we move into the digital and world. And they're building blocks. They work from the ground up. You can't just dive in. You'll find some players will try and just go in and attempt to perfect some of them, but it's not. It starts, and you can actually think about that. If you look at those 6 steps and think of any organization you deal with, or indeed any person you deal with that you can actually say you trust, you will find that there are the steps that get to that. And there's very, very important messages in there for us as we move towards the more digitalization of the operation and the engagement. The product and the simple, honest approach that credit unions have always had around not ripping anybody off. But getting to know me is a very interesting one. When credit unions started out and they were dealing with dozens of people, it was very easy. It was done on a very personal basis, and if they didn't know the person, they certainly knew the family, and were able to work from there. Now you're trying to do the same thing, but this time it's with tens of thousands of people. But the good news is, with digitalization, we can do a lot of that and keep that going, which enables us then to take that information that Mike was talking about and carefully guide and advise people. Certainly, it's all about making it easy for people, creating the minimum fuss for them to deal with the credit union, and then not to let them down. Occasionally, the ball will be dropped occasionally, but if it is, put it right, and make sure the person has a problem-free relationship with the credit union. And then in doing all of that, then we can share the benefits, and some of those benefits maybe traditionally would have been on a monetary basis. Now we're seeing that there's more value being placed on things like the quality of service, like the ability to be able to access the credit union, to access people and decision makers and so on. So the big challenge then is how do we modernize the delivery and the engagement? And the good news is, with a very, very solid financial base, and certainly, as Mike alluded to there, the fact that the credit union, through their behaviours and practices in the past, are clearly Ireland's most trusted financial services brand. So it's a great base to work on. So with that in mind, then we started doing another piece of work, and if we just move on, we'll see that what we actually developed was we went in and looked at all of the components of the model credit union, and there's a lot in there. Good news is I'm not going to go through all of it now, but as Siobhan said at the outset, this will be made available to you so you can have a look at it in your own time. And as you said, if there's any queries or questions, feel free to follow up with us. But what you'll see there are four very interrelated and interlinked areas. So we're looking at the value proposition for the members, the business model that operates, the governance of all of that, and then the financial outcomes and the financial modelling. So they're all very interdependent and interlinked. And what touches on all of them, as we've seen, is risk management. There are risks in every decision you make. So, but risk management can actually, with a good solid understanding, can actually help us to drive that forward. And it is interesting when you consider now the evolution into the digitalization. As Mike very rightly pointed out, it's not a matter of just taking something we did and slap a bit of code around it and say, now we've digitalized it. It's actually, it touches on each of those outer rings. I mean, it's the whole way people are organized, for example, is important. And the process, the essential thing is it's not about what's easier for us to do. It's actually all about what's easier for the member to engage with their credit union. And that's, if we are going to achieve those 7 outcomes on the right hand side, it has to be gone into in that level of detail. And with that in mind, you know, we've done quite a bit of work on that, and you know, what we would say is that as you touch into every single one of those, you do find that technology is the critical and common enabler of all of those, if we are to have a more efficient and more effective method of engaging with members, and as I said at the outset, in an improved cost income way. So if you move on to the next slide, then yes, this starts to share with you some of the digital solutions we have. When we started out on this journey, it was there on the left hand side, the digital marketing. And I mean, it started in a very simple way. We had a group of credit unions who set up the solution center and said that one of the primary things they wanted to do was extend the reach to engage and communicate with members or prospective members who didn't see the credit union as relevant because it wasn't speaking their language, it wasn't communicating on the channels that they and the mediums that they would use. So we started off with one very simple initiative promoting the credit union or certain purpose loans via Facebook. And that grew to various other channels from there. And then we found that, okay, great, now this is successful, people will engage, and people do like the credit union, and their preference would be the credit union if we make it easy for them to engage with us. So what we found then, the challenge was the conversion. So how do you now convert these? And at that time, the conversion, the time span on the lead was about 24 hours. That has come down dramatically. And indeed, you would have seen some of the competitor financial institutions using things like the 3-hour turnaround as their USP, whereas we're finding that is the case. This has to be fast, efficient, and to be effective. So that brought us into that next stage, that it was very clear credit unions wanted and needed a CRM platform to enable them to look at the whole workflow, to manage it appropriately. And what we did was we identified the best platform to be the Microsoft Dynamics. Microsoft's a global leader in this particular space, and then we're delighted to be partnering with Intuity to bring that and to continue to keep evolving it and to bring it to support you with your engagement with your members. And you can see there down that center panel the various different things it helps. And I think what's essential about that is each one of those it's making it easier for the member to communicate and to contact and to carry out, whether it's new loan activities or whether it's a service inquiry. All of those can be enhanced by through these processes. And like as Mike said, a lot of the outbound stuff can now be clearly directed. And all the time, when you think back to the pyramid, you're demonstrating you know the person, you're giving them timely, relevant communications. And the great thing about that type of a platform and and having a global leader in Microsoft delivering this platform, you can see on the right hand side then a whole series of other things can simply be plugged in to keep enhancing that experience. So we're going the wrong direction. I think we should be going forward there on the slide, please. Yeah, so we just go on to the final slide of you know, why Hive, and it's a busy slide, and again you can have a look at this in your own time, but the key thing is that what we are going through is a massive paradigm shift here. We're hanging on to all of the good values of the credit union. In fact, we're finding ways to even enhance them through even greater communication. And you can see there that the essential things are, it's actually better for the members, it's better for the team within the credit union as well. And overall, I suppose one key point I would make to you is that this is a credit union owned solution. It's driven by credit union professionals. There's a team of the participating credit unions make up a thing called HUG, which is the Hive user group, and they're the people who determine the next steps. And then, as I say, between the Solution Centre and Intuity, we're delighted to be able to support them as they continue to evolve the processes and the engagement and overall enhancing the experience for members, which all has a significant bottom line improvement. So that's a quick whistle stop tour, Mike. I'm going to hand back to yourself because I know you're going to do a demo on this now, and as I said, we can take any questions at the end if there's any. Thanks.
Thanks, Kevin. So yeah, sorry about that. I got caught with my wheel, my mouse wheel moved, and I moved your slides, and that's the nature of these things. So we're gonna do a demo here quickly. So apologies, folks. I think I rabbited on a bit longer than I should. Kevin caught us up as quick as I could. So we're going to do the demo. It'll be about 5 or 6 minutes. We can do a longer one at some point if anybody wants to get one. Contact us afterwards. And I am conscious that we're kind of cutting into the Q&A time, but we're going to keep going. But I'm conscious that other people, we're between you and your lunch, so other people will probably fall off. So I'm going to get the demo done. So starting with a demo, it starts with a need. So for me in my demo, it's a car loan. So I go to Google where everybody goes, and I search for a car loan. And because I'm in Galway and my local credit union is St. Anthony's, and St. Anthony's are doing some digital advertising, the ad that I see first of all that makes sense is the new car finance. So I click on their ad, and they bring me to a landing page, and on their landing page they have, you know, both an apply now form, but they also have this affordability calculator. So that's the idea of maybe before I apply for a 10 grand loan, let me check to see whether I could afford a 20 grand loan. So that's the affordability calculator, and then eventually I'm going to land on a form. So and the form is it's optimized. At this point I'm going to now try and jump into my demo environment. So the form is optimized. So as I said earlier on, it's about kind of trying to make it as easy as possible. So say, for example, I've gone on to my Dream Big and I've seen what's possible, and I go back into my form and say, no, I can afford to spend 20 grand on a car if I pay it off over 5 years. So I move forward. I put in my information, so an email address, and a phone number, something like that. And I'm a member when I agree to the terms and conditions, and I put in my member number. And I click apply. And then what we're talking about is, where does this go? Like, so this could be captured from a website and just sent into an email, or it could do what we've done in the Microsoft platform. We've built Hive. So I'll start at the dashboard at the start. So this is a sandbox environment that we use for demos. So we can see my lead that I've just put in here. It's entered in here as an open lead. So in the morning you come in and you can see your lead. So I can work on the lead from here. I can click it, open it up. I get all of the details here. It should have automated and matched it to the member number. If I have the member numbers in, if I have the members that we've kind of imported from the core banking system, it allows us to automate that the matching of what's a web form submission to what I know on the system. So if you can match that, you can allow the lead to be moved on to, yeah, it's an inquiry from an existing member. Check whether their details are the same. So is the email address and the mobile number the same? If yes, you say yes. If no, it can be directed towards another process to check on that. Well, one of the things that we've found on that with the Hive over the last year or so is there's an awful lot of new data that's kind of presented in here that isn't on the core banking system that comes in from members. So once you have that check on the data, you can press qualify and you say, yeah, this is going to be a lead. This is going to be a potential loan. Opportunity. So on the loan opportunity, you make phone calls. So you might make a phone call and you make it, this might be the initial phone call. Some credit unions deal with this on the lead and some deal with it on the opportunity. It all really depends on what your process is. So initial phone call, talk to Michael. And then we save and close this. And all of this activity that you capture about the loan opportunity is captured in this timeline in chronological order. So there might be a phone or a meeting that's required, or there might be a task that's required. Send out the docs. And when am I going to send them out? I'm going to send them on Monday. And again, maybe I'm going to do it, or maybe I'm going to give it to somebody else. But whatever the tasks are that go on into managing an opportunity. As we do this, you might capture what the next thing is. So the next thing might be a follow-up call, emailing docs. Follow-up on Tuesdays, right? So he said he's going to email the docs in on Monday, and I'm going to follow up on Tuesday. And again, I give a follow-up date. So this is an activity now it's going to decide when I'm going to do this. It puts that into a list. Ignore and save. I've probably got another record in the demo environment. So I now have qualify. We've got a kind of a process that we've worked out with the 5 or 6 credit unions that were part of the project to develop the system. So you kind of got broken down into pre-application stuff. When did you make contact? Make contact today. Are they CDD compliant? Yes or no? If it was no, what's outstanding? ID needed. Appointment status not needed or scheduled. And again, once you put the loan application on the core banking system, you can kind of put in the number here for the loan application, so you can begin to match it back down. One of the questions that was brought up was this idea of when are you going to draw it down? I'm buying the car in the next week or so, so you capture that as a data point. And you've got the pre-application stage, and then it might move on to the next stage. So especially for the larger loans, so at some point there's going to be an affordability check. Has it been done or no? Yes or no? What's the next action? You might need pay slips and other documentation. You can kind of capture that here, and you can get in if it's granted. Whenever it's granted, you'll kind of map it here. So one of the things the users of Hive has found that even after the loan is granted and you notify, they don't close the opportunity until the loan is drawn down. So again, we've got a list of statuses here where, you know, a loan moves through a pipeline or a process of, you know, it's a qualified lead, it becomes an opportunity, contact's been made, an application has been started, it's been submitted, you're awaiting decision, and as I said, partially drawn on and granted and approved. So we've got a status here, so you can begin to go back to your dashboards and you can see where the opportunities that you're running, what's happening, and how much, what amount of money is and what's happening on the system. Where's the pipeline? One of the questions that I hear sometimes in credit unions is what's going out next week? You know, what's due to go out? So you can be sure the stuff that hasn't been submitted isn't going out. So the application started stuff, this needs to move into application submitted before it'll be approved and it moves on. So that's the idea of bringing in an application through a lead. So it moves from being a lead and it moves on to being an application. So again, if we look down here, because I said the follow-up time is next week, it moves back down to the end of my list for things to move up. So I've got here initial call, send them the stuff, send out the information. These are tasks, and this is lined up for the time for when I said I would do this information. So a simple dashboard like this can be used to allow you to see all the activity, for somebody in the system to see all the activity. But there are other dashboards that you might do. So we might have dashboards that we'll use for reporting and management reports. So how many leads came in last month and this month, and what amount of money were they for? You know, have they been, what happened with them? Are they disqualified or qualified? Which ones are opened? And then down, you know, what were they for? Were they personal loans or car loans or education loans? What's the mix of the loan type that we're working on? And again, we've done another dashboard where we can drill down deeper into not only what loan it is, but where did it come from? Did it come from the digital campaigns, or did it come from the website, or did it come from emails? So where's the source of it? And again, further, you can drill down into this, the UTM source. So this is a code that can be given from the website. So the page that lands somebody onto the form, we can bring this code, so you know that if it came from a Facebook campaign or a Google campaign. So I'm going to jump out of the demo environment, and I'm going to jump back into the PowerPoint for a second. And I'll just make sure this works. So it's difficult on a demo environment without large amounts of data. It's very difficult to kind of get across what a dashboard might look like. But you know, when you've got large amounts of data, you can see you know, the lead source and the quantity, and you can hover over it and find out what's the amount of money and what's the number of leads, and you know, where they come from, and you can track it again. And again, you can see the outbound engagement. Oops, I've got some movement on my slides here, auto movement on my slides. So let me just jump back here, and I can pause this, I think. I think I can pause it. I don't know about how to pause it. Okay, we'll forget about pausing it. Oh, there's a pause. No. Not this way. So anyways, I suppose the point is, if you look at dashboards on large amounts of money or large amounts of data, you can begin to see trends, and over time you can check to see, you can compare month on month. One of the things we've worked on is getting these 13-month views, so you can compare April this year versus April last year. You can begin to see what's happening and to see whether the money that you're spending and investing in digital engagement, if it's resulting in the outcomes that you're looking for. So hopefully that makes sense. I just this webinar is about member engagement mainly, and I suppose we've been working with CUDA for the last number of years on building Hive, and it's really, we're building the home for digital member engagement so that we can capture a lot of this information and present it to the people who need to see it in the organization. So that's all I have in terms of a demo. Looking at the time, and we're 10 minutes over, but there's a good few you still here, which is good. So I think without any further ado, maybe Siobhan can come in and we can just do maybe a bit of Q&A.
Thanks, Mike. Well done. That was great. And thanks again to Kevin. So there have been a couple of questions coming in there. I've just noticed one that we've published, but I'm not sure we've answered, and that's in relation to video calling. Mike, Adrian asked, are we approaching a stage where initial loan meetings could be delivered remotely, or even full loan meetings for long-term and trusted members?
Yeah, well, I suppose I'm aware of, outside of the credit union sector, I'm aware of legal firms using Skype calls and the like a number of years ago to do signings so that they could do the signing remotely and move things on. And I think definitely the members will be on for the video calls. The credit unions after this lockdown, I think they'll be much more trained and enabled and ready for video calls. So I think on the webinar last week, Donal did a demo of Teams, where a Teams meeting could not only do the video sharing, but also do document sharing and submissions of documents over a video call. So it's the technology is definitely there, and it's just a question of a credit union spending the time to think about how they might do that.
Okay, this is the question.
There is the legal aspect of that. I don't know, maybe Kevin might have something on that. I mean, like there will be things that need signing, but I think some of the initial meetings will definitely be able to be done.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, it's a great question by Adrian, because it's actually the way the question is phrased is very good, because it's talking about the initial loan meeting. So I think a considerable amount can be done, and just purely by coincidence, I was actually on a call on Tuesday evening with some CEOs of Canadian credit unions, and they actually have started, and they just call it screen-to-screen interviews. And they're starting to do exactly what Adrian was saying there. So yeah, and I think people have become far more comfortable with this new way of sorry, I know it's not new, but it's very new to a lot of us in becoming part of the daily life. So definitely it's a way of a great way of engaging. It becomes a very personal engagement. What it starts to do, but is you have to look at the process, as Michael says, Mike said there, and there's work to be done around the capturing, certain documents that have to be signed and all of that. But I would suggest that it also gets us to look at our own work practices. So the hours of service that we offer, what's convenient for the members. So what time of the day, what day of the week are those initial loan meetings going to occur? All those practices come into play, but definitely it is part of the new way of engaging. Yes. Thanks, Siobhan.
Thanks, Kevin. There's another question here, actually, you might want to answer. If we enter the Hive system, are we sure each of the credit unions' data is kept completely separate? Yeah,
I mean, I'll hand over for the technical part of that to Mike, but I can tell you that each credit union is while the data is stored cloud-based, it is clearly segregated and protected, and in fact that was all pen tested and everything. So Mike, do you maybe want to add?
Yeah, sorry, I shouldn't be playing around with this stuff in the background. yeah, all the information. Yeah, we built the Hive solution on Dynamics, and you know, all of the information is stored separately in different business units. And as you said, we had an independent security company audit the process and you know, clarify that it's been built properly. So yeah, all the data is there. One of the things that it being on the one single shared platform gives us is this ability of aggregating data. It allows us to aggregate. It allows us to just aggregate what's happening in the market, which can be useful for the members of Hive, just to allow them to benchmark their own performance against what's happening on the overall system. But you know, from a privacy perspective, from a security perspective, we've spent a good bit of time over the last while making sure that we're 100% compliant with all of the requirements that have come up over the 2 years that we've built this system. So hopefully that answers it.
I think one of the other great little advantages as well, you know, as Mike said, all the security side is dealt with, but it also then gives you the ability to do steady releases, and all the enhancements then are available to everybody. It doesn't mean everybody has to necessarily use them, but they're all there. And the enhancements, as I mentioned earlier, are very much driven by the user group. So it basically means there is one version of the system, and that's available to everybody. So they get the benefits of the releases then, which happen on a frequent basis.
Okay, great. If a member makes a query online on our website overnight, where does that go in the Hive example? Can I send it to a loans officer? How is it tracked? Example, this is from John.
Yeah, so I'm going to jump back in here. So yeah, the first dashboard I started on, this is where they will show up. So generally it's, you have a dashboard where the stuff that comes in overnight will be sitting here in the morning, and you can track it. Like there's lots of things that we can do. If for example you had all car loans are handled by one loans officer, you could decide that if this says that it's a car loan, that it gets directed to that and it's in their queue. So they would have a view of the leads that is just, you know, their leads, my open leads, and they'd have the ones that have been assigned to them. So you have the ability in Dynamics. I didn't really show it, but you have the ability in Dynamics to assign leads. So if there's one person working on it, you can assign it to the member. I probably don't have anybody in here to assign it to, but you can assign it to other users or other teams in the system. So, and you can automate that assignment so that it happens as you say in the question. It can happen overnight, so that when they come in the morning, they can just see the loans or the inquiries that they need to work on.
It's probably fair to say, Mike, that the credit union can match those allocations to their own credit policy. So it matches up with the authorization limits, for example. So it means that this all goes back to that conversion and efficiency and convenience. The lead or the inquiry is going to the right person first time. So it speeds up the whole process, and as Mike said, that's controlled at a credit union by credit union basis. So you can match it up, as I say, with your credit policy, for example. Yeah.
I think one of the things that I've heard around the country is, you know, if the system, the automation can take care of 80% of the standard loans, the quick loans, the ones that are small amounts or with covered loans, anything. If you can program your credit policy so that like the system can allow those loans to move fast. Like people understand, if I'm borrowing 100 grand for a home improvement, they understand that that's going to move at a certain pace, but they can't understand if a €500 loan takes 2 days in a credit union. Whereas I can do it on online, and an online alternative in 3 hours. So it's to be able to automate the quick standard loans that are straight through. And again, I think like some credit unions have spent some time trying to identify, good borrowers. So like think about looking at their data and identifying criteria that allow them to identify who the good borrowers are, the people who they want to borrow, and then by the converse, identifying people who aren't good borrowers. So that allows them to catch some of those loans before they move too far through the process.
That's great. I have a question specifically for Kevin. Kevin, what's the example for the Hives that you can share with us in relation to loan or member engagement? No names needed if confidential.
We've probably touched on it a little bit there, because I think there were some learnings from the initial pioneers that were involved. It was really about getting the workflows right. So when the lead is generated through the digital marketing initiative, that it's getting from there to the decision maker as quick as possible. And sometimes what you'll find is it really is about getting it's the combination. It's not the system itself will not do this. It's the combination of the system and the people. That's the real learning that we would have got to date, is that you need to make sure the right people are in the right seats. So if an inquiry comes in, you need to be sure that it goes to the right source, and that person then has the skills and ability to make the follow-up conversation, the phone call, for example, has the ability to make the decision. So that's probably the best. And if well, we're not getting into names, if anybody actually wants to follow up, there are a couple of colleagues in credit unions who would be happy to, act like reference sites almost, so if anybody wants to get in touch, we could actually connect them, and they can actually hear it directly from the people who had those learnings and the changes they made internally to make this work for them. Is that okay, Siobhan?
Yeah. That's...
Hello?
Yeah,
Hello?
you're back. Yeah, you're back.
I think I might have been muted there. I just wanted to move through these questions as quickly as I can. I'm really conscious of time here. Pat wants you to know that the dashboard looks really well. And Maeve wanted to ask, if a loan is approved on the core banking system, will that status update automatically on Hive, or does the staff member have to then update Hive also?
So at the moment, you saw in the demo that we track the number that's in the banking system, the loan application number, as one of the fields that we track in Hive. So it isn't automated at the moment, but we are doing a certain amount of manual integration in relation to some loans that we're bringing into Hive for some of the users, so they can. Activity that happens on the core banking is being shown in Hive, so they can see it. Different credit unions have different ways of dealing with it manually at the moment, but it's on the wish list for what we would like the integration to do, the integration between the banking system to do, to allow it to auto close an opportunity. So if you think about leads, so somebody fills out a web form, that's a lead. When you're managing it in CRM, it's an opportunity. When you're managing it in the core banking system, it's an application for a loan, and then it becomes a loan. So these are different kind of record types, and it's the one from the member's perspective. It's the one thing. It's a loan application. I'm getting a loan. It's an inquiry. It's an opportunity. It's an application. It's a loan. And CRM deals with the lead and the opportunity, and the core banking deals with the actual application and the actual loan.
Okay,
hopefully that answers it.
Yeah, I think that might be all of our questions. I'm just conscious of time, guys. It's 1:25.
Okay.
Yeah, so thanks a million. as Kevin said, like anybody who wants to follow up with us, our email addresses are probably looking at the list of people who registered. I think I know most of you guys, and anybody who I don't know, I'm send myself or Kevin an email directly, and we can continue the conversation. So hopefully the time was useful. Apologies for running on a bit. Mostly me, I would think. So thanks for that, Kevin. Any closing words?
No, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. And while we are very much in the midst of this COVID-19 emergency, and as we all know, there's bigger challenges ahead. We have to look for the opportunities as well. And definitely communication and engagement with members is critical, and this is it's a great tool and support mechanism for you. So yeah, hopefully anybody that's interested, please get in touch with Mike or myself, and we'll be happy to help you along the journey. And thanks again for the invitation. Thanks.
Great. Thanks a million.
Okay.